Some viewers may find this content disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Who dares awaken me from my slumber? Ernie Davieau, the Squatch Whisperer. This must mean it is once again time for you and I to link up for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. Well, thank you for allowing me to feed and replenish lost nutrients and sources that I need to unlock my powers. So without further ado, it is now time for Ernie Davieau and myself to take a walk into the darkness. My creatures of the night, yes. Welcome back to another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on StarFox Radio. We again have Ernie Davieau, the Squash Whisperer, in the house. He did take a little hiatus to take care of some things, but guess what? He didn't go anywhere, and he is back and will continue to be back. Ernie, what's good, man? How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Having a little bit of rain here tonight, and our garden's coming along really good. We're starting to really finally produce a lot of vegetables, so we're doing good. I hope you are too. How you been doing?
That's excellent. I'm a big vegetable person too. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do try to, obviously, I eat chicken and things like that, but I make a lot of my diet as much vegetable based and with other proteins for sure. And not too bad. Just finally, as we were speaking about getting caught up. And yes, within 2 days here, I will be able to sleep for a whole day. Don't get me wrong. I've been getting 8 to 9, but I really like a nice 8 to 10 solid. And I've just been super busy, but it is what it is. When opportunity presents itself, you can't really control when it does. And you just kind of got to make sure to A, be ready for it, but B, just roll with it and, take the opportunity that's presented because obviously in a perfect world, we try to spread things out, but there's just been times where 4 or 5 different people would hit me up with opportunities, say in the same day, and I'm, editing my own stuff. So it is what it is, but it's good, man.
Yeah, you got to make sure you take care of that, Kenny. I mean, when you get older, you don't want to get really ugly. You know what I'm saying? So you need your beauty rest. Get your beauty rest in now.
Yes, no, this is true. I do love my sleep for sure, but like I said, I've been definitely getting proper, still 8 to 9, but I do function better at the 8 to 10. Yeah, it's not like this was
Mhm.
forever. It's just been a few weeks of grinding, and anyone that's great at anything in life puts in the work like that to
Yeah,
become good at your craft, whether you're an athlete, a journalist, a cook, etc. It applies to all of it. So, like I said, you gotta put in the work and no sleep for the wicked, right?
exactly right. Yeah, exactly. We were talking earlier here before we came on the air about DNA, what's embedded into our DNA as far as like fear goes, showing pictures. If you showed a picture to a young child or whatever, they've never seen anything like that before, but they're terrified of it, and then show them something that's nice. It's not would not be, let's call it a predator towards us. They're okay with it. I thought that was really interesting. Interesting, because that would come into play if you have an encounter.
Isn't that mind-blowing? For sure. I feel bad, obviously, for the children that had those experiments done on them, but that's just, I guess, how we learn. So I do not encourage anyone out there to ever do this to any children that you know, etc. But yes, you can look up studies that have been done that Ernie was just mentioning, where these scientists and such would show images to infants that can't even articulate words and can barely, function really. I mean, they can smile and giggle, etc., and cry, but they have no articulation really. And you would show them these images of predators, yes, like giant spiders, snakes, crocodiles, tigers, etc., and they immediately become hysterical. Yet when you would show them things such as a koala bear, a sheep, or things that are not a deer, things that are not predatory based, they would either have no reactions or would giggle kind of, or just smile a little bit. And it's super interesting because you have this infant that can't speak and that has never even seen these things, that just immediately has that interaction of, oh my goodness, and then becomes hysterical. Yet it's pivotal for people to understand throughout evolution. That's how we have gotten to where we got to this moment to even have these conversations. If people didn't wake up for loud noises in the middle of the night, whether it's an acorn or thunder, well, rewind in the past, that would have been an invading tribe, a massive bear or something coming into your campsite. And well, the ones that don't get up, we all know what would have occurred. So yes, it's just super interesting. And I love science and I'm a big nerd in general. So just learning, I always encourage everyone to learn, just seep in things, even if it's outside of the realm that you're trying to pursue, just learn, especially if it's quality information.
Yeah, that might explain a lot with my generation because they used to subject us to the Jack in the Box, so we don't frighten as easily. But anyway, I think we're going to talk about a little bit about the sightings here that are going on in Ohio. I think it's been about 2 months, and we really weren't getting anything going on down around this area here near the Cincinnati area. And now we have them in Pickaway County, we have them in Athens County, we have them in Jefferson County, just all over the board here. I don't know what anybody else is picking up on this. They're having an outburst of sightings around their area too. I mean, Clinton County, there's another one. They're just popping up everywhere. And we have spoken about this before. Some of them are mistaken identity, quite obviously, but not all of them are. So, what are your thoughts on that?
That sounds great to me, my friend. And you're really in Werewolf Square, like I dubbed that, because Aaron Deese from Small Town Monsters is a good buddy of mine, and I always liked how he had the Dogman Triangle down in Texas. So I like the wordplay. And him and I both agree, obviously, and like we preach and I preach to everybody else, there are big differences between werewolves and dogmen, but everybody wants to use these words interchangeably. So
Yeah.
I did the same right there, just on wordplay. You're not in a square of people turning into werewolves, okay? It's just dubbed Werewolf Square because it sounded cooler than Dogman Square, in my opinion. And you're in the area of Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, LBL area, parts of Pennsylvania, West Virginia. And yes, it's a big square where there's a ton of interactions and reports. And yeah, there's definitely some misidentifications, but then there's other ones. The more I'm thinking about this stuff and the more I am researching, and I was so aware of this song by Steve Cook, never heard of it though, and listened to it called The Legend, and looking into some of the things he had mentioned in there and actually some encounters in that area that I wasn't the most familiar with. And, for example, like what the heck are lumberjacks out in the middle of the forest in like 1887, right? Just doing their work. they come across something that looks to be a dog, or so they thought, and they're trying to chase after it to play with it, and it runs into this log. One of the lumberjacks sticks in a large stick, starts moving it around. This thing makes a crazy howl, which is what we report here. And they said it sounded like man, human-like. All of a sudden, it stepped out and it was on two legs, growling at them. They were like, "What the heck?" Ran off, got their stuff, and left. No one ever heard from the lumberjacks again, and they never spoke of it. Why would that even be a thing, man? Why would those people even say any of that or such? Like, there has to be some sort of truth to what's going on. I mean, then you got in 1987, Jeff Chamberlain, that deputy in Michigan, where he was called to a cabin in Luther, where there was bloody like slobber marks all over and shoe marks on the side of the door and claw marks where you could see something was literally trying to rip in with his jaws, but there was canine tracks all around. And then you have another case where someone that was manning a church claims he was attacked in this church by something. Well, when they opened the door the next morning, there was huge claw marks all over it that looked to be canine, but it would have had to be 7'4". How is this all made up before we really had big time hoaxing issues?
It's more than likely that a lot of people didn't want to talk about it because it wasn't fitting into the criteria of the Bigfoot or anything like that. They weren't seeing those kind of tracks around or anything else. I'm glad I'm not in Werewolf Square, I can tell you that, because I'd be more concerned about that. We had gone for a hike out in this area at the preserve, I think it is, and that's 450 million years old, that area. I didn't realize that. But these things that you're getting like reports on, stuff like the church, that would be a little bit iffy for me, a little sketchy going into there and then seeing claw marks. Who does that? You know, did the priest do that? No, come on.
I guess he could have, like you said. Yes, they all could have, but why would Deputy Chamberlain talk about that? And he got harassed afterwards and never spoke about it again because people trolled him.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's the part that, happens a lot in some of the other forums and things like that is, that evidence, you really need that. And like yourself, you're above what I put above a researcher, what people deem to be a researcher. You're a journalist researcher. You're a little bit deeper in that. You're looking outside the box and everything. You're looking for reasons. And I personally, I don't see when people do something like that to somebody, that's like bullying. Is you're losing valuable information. There's something in there that you could compare against another eyewitness encounter. The one you were saying about the police officer showing up in the blood all over the place, and then the church there with the claw marks. I mean, that's what is that? Is that a demon? What is that? But we're not going to know because that guy they bullied him and he's not around anymore, right?
It's straight up, I'm just getting goosebumps thinking about it because that song is so dang epic. Man, no lie, Ernie, last night when I discovered it, like I said, I've known of it, okay? But I just was like, you know what? I'm working on stuff right now and I want to hear the Legend song by, Steve Cook so I can actually really talk about this and have a quality opinion. So then I'm just listening and getting not scared, but just realizing this is so factual, like what's occurring with how many reports they are just in this area. And I started going through and looking up everything he speaks about.
Wow.
And sure enough, here's the cookie trail with the documents. And a lot of it is obviously before things were fully documented, but it was 1887. I just told you about this encounter with the lumberjacks, so it was documented enough.
Yeah.
And there is definitely something out there that people are seeing. We were and still are going to go right back to Ohio because that's right down the corner. But for example, I'm starting to think maybe these things aren't really going to do specific damage to us until we are encouraging it. I mean, not in all situations, but for example, okay, we were talking about this the other night where someone had this encounter with, you ever seen Dog Soldiers, that movie?
Yeah.
Okay, you know how they're tall and like athletic, lanky, but they're not really jacked or anything. But I mean, they're strong enough, but they're more, athletically built werewolves, if I
Mhm.
can describe that to anybody. Well, this gentleman said he saw something that looked like that, but taller and more sickly looking, more or less. But what had happened is it was banging into the side of his. He had taken a Tacoma and converted it into basically like a travel RV, and this was down near the Appalachian area,
Okay.
Smokies and such, and Eastern Tennessee, I believe. Either way, was woken up to this, and he could hear it sniffing and breathing heavily, and it was smashing into the side of his truck, and it went right to the back and started like trying to open the door handle to this makeshift RV, which really shouldn't be that big of a deal to rip off if it wanted to. So time out now. William White, our geologist, is 6'4". I believe he said he's like 240-ish. And his little kid one time got into their RV and locked himself in. And William didn't want him getting into silverware in there or just things that could hurt him. His son couldn't open the door. So William, with pretty much ease, he said, ripped off the side of the RV to get his kid out. Okay, we're not talking about this iron cast door
Right.
that is impossible to get open. I'm telling you right now, Ernie, yeah, if your wife or somebody you cared about was stuck into an RV, you could get the door open too, man. Okay. Like it's not that big of a deal. So this creature why didn't it just rip the door off? And then it goes around and it goes tick, 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 tick. It's hitting the windows with its fingernails. And then he jumps right into the front of his truck, turns it on. All the lights go on. He's got like a rack of lights on the top and all around the truck. Creature covers its eyes. This is when he sees what he's looking at. And also he's whamming on the horn. So it's kind of like covering his ears, and he takes off. Doesn't really ever pursue him. Okay. Another case recently, gentleman steps outside. He's come home because his mother has become sick, and he doesn't realize until he speaks to his aunt that his mother lost 2 golden retrievers recently, and other people in the area over the past 4 or 5 months had been losing livestock and pets, etc. So he is like to his mom, but she's sick. Why didn't you tell me this? And she's like, well, I was going to, but I got a lot going on, etc. So whatever. He steps outside 3:30 in the morning to smoke a cigarette, hears really strange sounds, and ends up stepping back inside. And his mom's hysterical, so he runs into the room, and his mother screams that it's back, it's back. And he's like, what do you mean it's back? He's like, what took my golden retrievers is back, the monster outside. And he's like, what do you mean you never told me this? He starts telling him about how it picked up her 2 golden retrievers. They were screaming in pain and ran off. So he now grabs his flashlight and a shotgun, steps back outside, and starts to hear the screams of the bunnies that are right behind his mom's room. They built a special cage for her bunnies, basically to make it so foxes and coyotes any known predator couldn't really get into this cage. Okay, sure, a bear or something could rip it off, but we're talking about it was as safe as possible for her bunnies outside. Well, all of a sudden it goes silent. He's trying to muster up some courage to go see what was going on. Goes around the corner, sees the cage ripped to crap, and the bunnies are just guts everywhere, but he doesn't see the creature. And what I'm wondering here is, okay, so again, why didn't it just bust open the window, grab her, pull her out? Why didn't this creature in the truck just bust it open? Is it because they didn't engage negatively, or more or less, you know how you have to, in legend and lore, invite something in, for example, maybe like a vampire or some sort of black-eyed children? They have to be like invited in, kind of, right? So not saying these things have to be invited in, but honestly, I have not really heard of too many cases of Dogman actually just going into people's houses. Yes, I've heard of them trying to, like the Palmyra case, but I'm actually talking about busting in and going into the living room. There's a couple of cases, but they're very red flag question marks. So I'm wondering, is there this barrier where if you and I shoot at it all of a sudden, then we've engaged now some sort of negativity, and of course, now we've asked for what's occurring. But why didn't it rip off the RV? Why didn't it rip her out the window? What are we missing here?
You know what? Maybe they beat off a fear. You know what I'm saying? Because on the LBL down there, the Palmyra case and stuff, what had happened to the guy that was camping, one of the guys that was camping there, a turkey hunter, he was in his tent. That's got to be terrifying. So let's just assume that that's what was happening to him. But then you got Martin Groves that was down there at the same time. They were in the same camped area. And I won't get into the whole story, but it seems that they were really trying to get a rise out of Martin as he was walking back to his campsite. They were way out there, okay, in the land between the lakes. They were way out there. And as soon as he got close enough to his campsite, as he heard his partner, and when he got in there, they armed themselves. They basically had to shoot their way out, and it could be the fear factor. If there's no fear, why would it be tapping on the glass?
Like, it wants your attention, but I mean, if it's this massive beast that can take down a cow, etc., there's really no logical reasoning for it not to bust just through the window. I'm just trying to be logical here. Like I said, I'm a scientific based individual, and I'm just thinking right now, man, if you wanted to get into my window enough as a human being, you could punch through my window if you really wanted to and get inside of my house. Okay. So it's just strange to me, I guess, sometimes as to why it's not coming in there. I do understand some of these are paranormal based and maybe necessarily capable of or manifestations, but then you have the cases where it is a physical thing, leaving blood, leaving slobber marks. Well, the Luther, Michigan case, it seemed like that one was doing everything it could to get in. I don't know if when Deputy Chamberlain came to respond to the call, it disturbed it, or I don't know if some of the neighbors, whoever saw it doing it, called it, disturbed it. Yet, like I said, but then you have these other cases where it's not really trying to get into your place. So I don't know, man, but I don't encourage anyone to try to befriend these things. I have a very ominous feeling. I don't think they are friendly, okay? I mean, I'm sure there are different versions that are more hostile than others, but honestly, there are people missing, okay? There's unknown cave systems. We have unknown tracks, unknown vocalizations. Things are occurring and people are going missing, okay? Everyone should really be aware and safe out there, because I do really dislike having to say this, but something is occurring, okay? So people really should definitely be aware.
Maybe it's the adrenaline. I mean, when you talk to anybody that's like myself that's in the meat business or anything like that, maybe they can smell that. You know what I'm saying? Because it seems like they really terrify those rabbits, or they terrify everything else before they take it. So maybe that's exactly what they're doing, is they're trying to actually terrify you or the Labradors, you know?
Which would make sense. And now that you say that, I was actually thinking that in my mind too, is that potentially maybe it's just like a little warm up that they're going to come back and get you at some point in time. So, for example, if that gentleman would have came back and camped in that area again, who knows? But obviously, no one in their right frame of mind that has had that type of encounter goes back on their own will without proper
Yeah.
protection to go back to that area. So a lot of times, unless it's, for example, that woman in her house having reoccurring issues, then yeah, that would really make sense. And, before we go back down to Ohio too, you got another case in Michigan right around all that time where this woman that was a widow, and I don't know, eventually it was spun that she was crazy, but she apparently woke up and saw these human-like dog creatures dancing around in her yard and howling and such, and people tried to say she was just dreaming and she was insane. Okay, like I said, I'm a realist, my friend, all right? Obviously, I understand hoaxes and misidentifications. Yes, yes, yes. I preach that's all coming into play, but there's so much more here that is coming into play, meaning I'm a big person about the hyena, okay, and the dire wolves and people seeing those and the baboons. But yet you have these cases like that where these people swear up and down that after you show them that, and they do agree that those look scary and werewolfish, but they still think it looks like something from the Howling or Dog Soldiers, which doesn't look like a baboon or a bear or such.
I mean, just the value in my mind's eye on what's going on there. I mean, I've heard of a lot of people. A lot of people call people nuts because they see things like that lady seen a couple of them dancing around out in the yard or whatever. Who are we to say that that's not true? But I can tell you this: if we were officers, and she kept calling us and telling us that, and then finally we just said, you know what, Kenny, let's just go get ourselves a couple of jelly donuts tonight. You know, take our time getting over there, only to get over there and find out that's the night, or we don't go. and it's the next day we find out that's when she's missing. And that has happened in my life. I know the town that I grew up in. It was called Shatterack Pond, and it was an elderly couple that lived right near Shatterack Pond. And one night, he had heard somebody yelling for help out near the pond. There's nobody around. It's out there in the woods. You know, I'm not gonna say it's a town, but it's out there still in the woods. He went up to check it out, and he didn't see anybody. And the next night it happened again. So called the town constable, which my father had known. I was pretty young at the time, but I knew his daughter, and growing up, we were able to talk about this, of course. But what had transpired over like a 3 day period of time, he kept hearing that somebody calling for help out there, and he kept going out there. And now it enveloped the people at the bottom of the mountain. The town at the bottom of the mountain was called Russell, and it was the state there. They called in the state like on the fourth day, and they came in to investigate and didn't find anything. Well, it was like the fifth or sixth day. There was a break in the action, and his wife called up the constable and had the constable come and get my father because her husband and her had heard the calls for help again out there, and they went up there, and they had to immediately call the state troopers in there because they found him over 20 feet in the mud, no tracks of him going into the mud down by the lake with his neck broken. So what's going on there? Yeah, you can't be. In other words, you can't be doubting somebody. They could be crazy, but it's best to be aware of it, anyways. I'll say, you don't want to show up. I mean, we watched enough horror movies that's how people get whacked on the horror movies. It's like, yeah, there's nothing in the closet, or let's just go hide in the basement. No, when you're in fear, you totally lose all of that. You let your guard down. And what if maybe they can smell your adrenaline because you're scared? Could be.
Jeez, yeah, that definitely makes some crazy, gnarly sense for sure. And there was actually a case down in Ohio in the past 20 years of these little kids that came outside, and in their backyard, off in the distance, they saw a group of dog-like creatures. One was wearing what looked to be either a bone crown potentially or a crown of branches, and that's what also got me kind of potentially saying, I think a lot of times maybe when people are having goat man type of sightings, that it could be a dog man actually wearing the skull of something more or less, but they seem to be doing some sort of dance or ritual type aspect, and they danced off into the forest, and these were little kids that had seen it at that point in time, which is super interesting. And also, I wanted to ask you, correct me if I'm wrong, Boy That Cried Wolf, isn't that based off of some sort of legend that had truth to it? Meaning, yeah, this person, like you said, kept calling in more or less, or he kept saying he saw a wolf, and then the time he actually did, well, no one came to help him, more or less, like you had stated, where, say, if someone consistently was calling in for help and then they just don't show up.
Exactly. I do remember us actually saying that is when is it going to stop? And finally it did one day. He had called and nobody showed up, and he went in looking, and it was the next day that his wife had called into the constable and got my dad out there, and they got the state police when they found him out there. But he's not the only one. He's not the only one. Within probably, I'd say, from there, the next closest one was probably only a mile and a half from there. Same situation. Well, no, that guy fear. He sat down up against a tree to light a smoke, and he fear. Then there was two, probably 12 miles from there, that they were hunters that were found with their necks broken. So what's going on there?
What the Christmas trees, Ernie? Oh my goodness, as you just said that, because I was gonna say something else, but then like that Steve Cook song as well. Okay, so first off, I was gonna say before I mention that, and before we tie this up, is I do encourage anyone, make sure to realize that predators, especially cats, don't like leaving footprints. Okay, so meaning that always look up when you go out in the forest, and Dogman and Sasquatch use trees as well. So if you come to an area where tracks may disappear, high probability they've jumped up into the trees to go back and forth with each other. And make sure you are aware of that, and also that they are upwards. Okay, don't always look down in the forest, meaning you need to make sure to look up as well to be aware as to what's occurring.
Agree with that 100%. You know, try to remain calm. You don't want to be smelling like the Chinese buffet out there. You know, remain calm, turn around, get out of there, leave. If you think there's something wrong that bad, it probably is. Be aware.
Yeah, and that Steve Cook song, The Fear, like you were just saying, what the heck? There was a sheriff that was walking down a road and he came across a man where he had basically been in some sort of field sled, and there was 4 horses around him, and same thing with him. They had all died supposedly at fear, is what the coroner had said. And there was huge wolf tracks all around. And then they found another hunter, that same thing, was leaned up against a tree, again was unalived by fear, yet nothing ripped him apart but just all the tracks around him. So when you had said that, that just popped into my brain, because those are some old cases right there too, where apparently it just scared the living Christmas trees out of these people and animals so bad they just unalived.
Yeah, and those were completely basically unreported. You know, there's nothing on a BFRO site or anything like that. That happened to have been in the newspaper, and you know, tell you the truth, there's been a lot of mysterious stuff in there. That's where I grew up. We had what we called the Mrs. Pinky, the witch, and man, she would just come out of nowhere, and you would see her. It looked like she was floating through the fields and everything. You know, really weird stuff going on up there. I don't think she did it, but
Jeez,
these people,
no, for
yeah,
sure.
it was a really weird area. That's all I can tell you, you know. And that there was a prime example of what happened with that guy that sat up against a tree. And although where I had my encounter now, which is in basically the same area, it's within 10 miles of that easily, is they have a cemetery there. I won't name the name of the cemetery, but in that cemetery, a lot of the gravestones say killed by the beast on it.
That's crazy you say that too, man, because I have a couple of gravestones that have been submitted to us as well that have some really strange, yeah, insignias on them in regards of that, like Isabella Clark's. And then there was also another one that was submitted to us saying our beloved daughter was taken by walking human wolves. Like Jessica Jones was saying, that's when you no longer exist. I mean, that's not really something to joke about. So, I mean, I guess
Right.
maybe every once in a while you might have got the sick family member that's got a twisted sense of humor that might have been in charge of putting the insignia on the gravestone.
Yeah,
But let's be real here. The odds of that occurring on all of these are very slim. So, yeah, it's super interesting and super terrifying. And I always do, really appreciate sitting down with you, man, and picking your mind, because we always do have some really good conversations, and definitely it's a
yeah,
step in the right direction as to figuring out what's occurring for sure, my friend.
yeah, yeah. It's awesome. So with that, I think we're coming up on our time limit here, aren't we?
Pretty close, my friend, and you are a busy guy and such, but we will be seeing you again here quite soon. And within, like I said, the next few days, I will be able to actually have the podcast air at the midnight time frame, and I'll be able to premiere stuff. So yeah, it's all going to be pretty caught up here soon. Like I said, 5 more videos on my phone, and then I have, I think, 7 or 8 on Skype, but that's fine. They stay there for like 30 days or so. So then I can back my phone up and then just literally pluck through those, and boom, I'll be caught up. And then pretty much every time I speak to somebody, I'll be able to have those episodes out within the next few days. So
Yeah, that's fantastic, and you're a real inspiration to people that are thinking about even doing podcasts. Is like you told me today. It's mind-boggling that you do everything that you can. You can do everything on your cell phone right now. It would be better if you had a computer, but you're doing it with your cell phone, which is amazing. I mean, you got to know what you're doing, obviously, like you. But that's
Appreciate you, my friend. But yeah, no, you are preaching the truth. I do everything for my iPhone 15 Max Pro. I do have a Samsung Art tablet that when I do like to get a little bit more creative and I have some extra time to draw some things by hand and such, I use that. But no, everything I do video wise is all done on my iPhone. So all the images and such, I just use Apple editing programs. And yeah, someday it would be great to get a really nice Apple setup, but right now I just gotta do and use what's been presented to me, and it's very useful, and I can create all the things I need to, so can't really complain, you know?
Yep, you're getting there. You're getting there. You're going to be there pretty soon, guaranteed. Well, well earned.
Appreciate it, my friend. It's because of people such as you and Jessica Jones, Steve Stockton, Jody Cook, and just all the great people that, help keep my content out there and sharing it around, because there was points in time where and still I've yet to be able to really share around anything because I just had one focus is to get stuff up. So no, I appreciate it. And I always do thank my audience, because with anything in life, without audiences and fans or people that respect what you do, whether you're an athlete, musician, etc., well, those people don't really have a platform without the ones that support them. So I always encourage people that really respect the people that give you a platform and support you, because at the end of the day, no matter who you are, you're not really anything without the people that support you. So it's just a good thing to remember.
You're right. You're right.
Thank you for everyone who once again stopped by tonight for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Star Fox Radio. If you do enjoy my content, please like, subscribe, and share it. Feed the algorithm, and I will see you very soon.